Yes. 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 Luffy versus Imu at long last. After like 8 long years of waiting, the future Pirate King is now finally throwing haymakers at the king of the world. Saint Verona Imu, the devil of the Holy Land, and Monkey D. Luffy, the next Pirate King / Sun God. I really can't fully put into words right now the feeling I have watching Luffy's fist absolutely just rip into Imu, but I'll do my best to do so. I feel a lot of excitement, tons of it. I feel like blood is rushing, probably like your second. Though I also must say, I feel like some immense dread right now, like a wave of dark fear, anxiety, and terror that's just absolutely consuming me, because Luffy fighting Imu now, without learning all the secrets of Gear 5, without even knowing the true history of the world or what his devil fruit is, without mastering any of his powers really, this doesn't feel good. But it's awesome. Like, I don't want to take away from the absolute momentous occasion happening right now. The climax of Elbaph is truly underway here, and what we're about to see should put legendary fights like Luffy and Lucci, or Luffy even versus Kaido, at absolute shame, theoretically. What will actually happen? Well, I kind of think there are a few things that should go down, and I will be admittedly a little bit disappointed if they don't, just putting that ahead here. But this is the first big clash between the hero and presumably the big villain of the story. We ought to see some spectacle, I think, but what I really hope to see is, of course, Loki in action too with Luffy. I know it kind of feels a little bit off to be like, oh, Luffy v Imu, awesome, where's Loki? That's not what I mean here. It's just that we're finally seeing a Luffy and Loki fight together for the first time, right? The entire Elbaph arc so far has just been one long, edging tease to this power duo finally unleashing destruction and liberation together, right? You know what I mean? Like, the two aspects of the Sun God felt like a reference to these two characters, Harold and Zebek. All of that Harold and Zebek stuff, it kind of felt like it was building up to these two fighting side by side now. You know, everything about Zebek's plan to use the two fruits, one of which was the Nidhogg fruit to conquer the world. You know, like, for months we've been theorizing together that the God Valley flashback was hinting toward this pair, Luffy and Loki, bringing together Ragnarok. The end of the world, the end of Imu, in other words. So you best believe that I want to see Loki and Luffy unleash the coolest freaking combo moves that you've ever damn seen in the story. Lightning and rubber, an interaction teased way back in Skypiea, right? One that we've never actually seen used proactively. I mean, technically, you know, Luffy's grabbed lightning from the sky before, I get it, right? But that's not what I'm talking about here. We know that Luffy can reflect and deflect it, so I kind of want to see the absolutely creative bonkers stuff that Luffy and Loki can do together in action. You know, Torheim being directed like a dang Kamehameha. Yeah, I want to see that. Luffy's baseball bat swinging, just ripping balls of Conqueror's hockey, lightning and ice at Imu. Yeah, you bet I want to see that. I mean, Luffy grabbing Ragnar and swinging him around with some insane rubber powers. I want it all. I want to see it all. But I also want to see what the hell actually happens when Gear 5 and Omen actually interact. You know what I mean? Like, there's no other way to put it, because Imu is just the perfect opposite of Luffy. Or, well, maybe we should say that he's more like the dark reflection of Luffy. Like, they do the same things, but one is evil and dark flames, the other one is bright light and, you know, goofy vibes all around. So how exactly will Omen, which has been framed as a power that lurks in all things by Imu in chapter 1181, how's that gonna interact with Luffy, a user of the voice of all things? Maybe you've seen the video, I recently theorized about this in the Sound of Creation theory I put out. Regardless if that's right or wrong, the point is gonna be interesting either way. Will Luffy counter Omen with Gear 5 and his voice of all things? Or will Omen start driving Luffy completely insane because it eats away at his Gear 5 powers? What's like the actual difference between Imu's Maki and Luffy's Haki? Not sure how you feel about this, but all I know is that Luffy should, at least on paper, look like an absolute high schooler about to play college sports for the first time. You know what I mean? Like, Little Big League over here is not ready for a match with the devil himself, the guy that has been ruling and scheming for over 800 years. And that's a good thing. I think it's a really good thing, actually. I think that Luffy needs to get whooped here by Imu real hard for two specific reasons. One, it actually keeps the stakes of the story high and, puts them to a level that we actually want to see them, like if Luffy can somehow actually square up with Imu right here on like an equal footing, I'm gonna be honest, I'll be a little bit disappointed because it all just means that the current version of Gear 5 is just uber broken, there is not much to explore, and like Luffy can just already beat the strongest being in existence, presumably. I really don't think and hope that Oda's gonna go that direction. It kind of feels like Luffy still has a fair bit of growing and learning to do before he's actually able to win this type of battle. However, I do think that he has a massive opportunity to actually learn and grow from this fight, of course. And this is actually the point where I want to do something that I've never done on the channel before. I want to make a little bit of a bet with you, the viewer, because I am just extremely confident that throughout this fight, somehow Blabbermouth Imu is gonna like slip up or do something dumb and actually by accident teach Luffy how to ascend to his true power. I feel like we're gonna get a moment where he's gonna teach him about Nika's special version of Omen, or not realize that like Luffy doesn't even know anything about his devil fruit, and he's gonna accidentally show him the secret to actually getting stronger and maybe even defeating Mu himself. And I'm just feeling so good about Oda pulling this exact move that it should go down this exact way, and if it doesn't, I will make whatever video you guys chose. So collectively, I ask you to very quickly take the time and drop your video idea in the comments that you've always wanted to see on this channel, as wild and as wacky as they can get. I will do it if I'm wrong. Theory, I'll do it. Analysis, I'll do it. Crazy what if, or like a weird One Piece challenge or something. I'm a glutton for punishment. We're gonna make that video. As long as it's, realistically doable and not against the terms of service and it's related to One Piece, we're gonna make it happen. So leave your ideas in the comments below and like the video ideas that you resonate with the most. The most liked video idea will be the one I choose if I'm wrong, which I don't think I am. I am so sure because this is just exactly Oda's stick, what he always does, right? This is like the Shonen 101, and not the bad kind, right? Think about your favorite shonens: Dragon Ball, Naruto, Yu-Gi-Oh! Ooh, Yu-Gi-Oh! Man, a blast from the past. Hunter x Hunter, right? Like My Hero. I don't care which one. There is usually this one key moment, you know what I'm talking, like where the heroes learn to defeat the villains because of their first interaction, and that almost always happens when the villains' powers mimic the main characters. Like, just quick example off the top of my head, if like Goku learned the nature of his race's power boost from Vegeta, which helped him then become a Super Saiyan. Or I don't know, like Sasuke learned the power of the Mangekyo Sharingan from Itachi. Hell, Yugi Muto busts out Kaiba's moves all the time to win his card games. Basically, the rule is when the villain is the evil but better powered version of the MC, then the main character should learn how to access their unlimited power from watching that villain do it better than them. And that's why I feel so assured in this gamble with you guys. We can see and cash in at the end of this fight, whether it's going to be 1 chapter or 10. We'll find out. Now, what exactly could that be? Well, I've briefly touched on them, but I haven't gone too in-depth here, so let's do that real quick. Luffy could learn about Maki and how to access this unrelentingly more badass version of Haki. He could also learn more about the true nature of being Nika, or Gear 5, right? Maybe Imu and his big old gossiping mouth, which you can't deny this man really has, he loves chatting, will actually spill the beans by comparing him to Joy Boy. Again, like, you could never wear a straw hat, you haven't even learned how to do omen bestowment like Joy Boy could, you're weak, and if you can't do this one thing that I do really well, you could never defeat me, and blah, you get the idea, right? Blah, blah, blah. And then at some point, Luffy actually learns to do that thing and makes Angel mega badass Loki or something, who then kicks Imu's butt. Another option here is that Imu may just reveal part of his plan, which gives Luffy all he needs to defeat Imu, mentioning the Mother Flame, pointing out a weakness. Actually, I think he already has done that in this chapter, because he just kind of mentioned it to Loki instead. Imu tells Loki in this chapter that it's the children that led to the defeat 800 years ago. Presumably, the giants saved their kids, sacrificing something, that way giving Imu the upper hand. So maybe in a wild turn of events here, Loki and Luffy are gonna have to let the kids get kidnapped by the grabber. I mean, by Imu. Like, it's a little bit harder for me to believe just because letting the evil, like, guy yoink the kids is a little bit sketchy, so maybe they'll let someone else get kidnapped or go with them, like Scopper or something, so that they're at least not alone. I just feel like there are too many key connections here between Luffy and Imu's powers for Imu not to slip up somehow. I really hope you know what I mean here, right? Like, they both create objects from nothing. They transform items into whatever they want. They just kind of bend reality around them. The drums of liberation seem connected to the weird, evil chanting music stuff that Imu arrives on Elbaph with. All I'm saying is there is a clear threat here to chase down, just maybe not today because we don't have enough new information at this point. But you know what we do have a bunch of context for now? The fact that the raid will succeed, ladies and gentlemen. That, of course, being the raid on Elbaph by the Holy Knights. They will come out on top, baby, and I kind of hate that, but it also really needs to happen. Veni, vidi, vici. Caesar's quote in Latin, by the way, for I came, I saw, and I conquered, and it's also probably going to be tattooed across Imu's chest after he's done claiming Elbaph once and for all. Like, it'll be kind of hard to fit the words on his body in between all the dot stuff. I think you can probably make it work just here. I'm gonna have to squeeze it in and use a weird font. But why? Why do I think that Imu should win? Manu, are you not cheering for the main character? Well, we've of course talked about this before. It's because the stakes of the entire endgame of the series are depending on this very moment, I feel. Like, that's genuinely what I'm a little bit worried about, but also excited about, because at least to me, Oda's making some soft hints that this will in fact go very, very badly. And that's simply because everyone and their moms just focused on the sick final punch of this chapter, as they should be. I mean, Luffy hits Imu with a forceful and just like a truly satisfying pop. You know, one of those print it and hang it on the wall type of punches, one of those Crunchyroll YouTube highlights that keep popping up a lot on my recommended feed recently. You know, like it's gonna be one of those clips where it's gonna say, Luffy punches Imu so hard the original One Piece theme starts playing kind of style, right? Like, the new dawn is beginning to rise. That is kind of what Oda wants you to believe. But I'm here to keep promoting that Imu agenda, because Imu is gonna get up right away from this punch, and it's gonna be a bad time for Luffy and the Straw Hats. I kind of hope, honestly, because as I've been sitting here stewing on this very moment, as legendary as it is, I've kind of figured out why it feels so good, but also so wrong at the same time. Because, let's be real, isn't this just Saba Odi all over again? Like, something I've been theorizing and haven't had a true reason to double down on until right now. Because if there is one thing that Oda absolutely loves doing, it's giving us an incredible high, like the highest high, right then before pulling the rug out straight from under our legs. Because the most legendary moments in the series are very often followed by just absolute downpours of bad, and badder. I mean, just take a moment and really think back to Saba Odi and how it played out. For the first half of the entire arc, everything feels just like an absolute celebration of the Straw Hats' powers. The Straw Hats have just conquered Enies Lobby and saved Robin, you know, like declared war on the government, got away with it. They just beat another warlord. They just met the hand of the Pirate King himself, reaching the halfway point of the Grand Line. Not only that, they've also escaped to Lebark, defeating another warlord and gaining a new crew member, and, you know, as we know, nothing else happened there. And they just reached the halfway point of the Grand Line. Every member of the crew is getting a lot stronger. They're very popular. The oceans are stirring. People are talking about them. The supernovas are present here. Luffy and Zoro are recognized as literally the guys to watch for. Like, they'd be going in the first round in the Major League of Pirating draft, basically. And then, of course, you know exactly what happens. That grimy little goblin man, Saint Charlos, shoots Hachan. It's an absolutely brutal moment, followed up by Luffy casually strolling up to him, and without hesitation, he just absolutely decks a celestial dragon back into black and white. And to this day, I still think that is easily one of the most satisfying punches in all of manga. It truly just might be the greatest punch of all time, just because of the weight and symbolism. Like, it was cathartic, it was anticipated, it was like the first time we'd actually seen Luffy really tackle the root of the problems in the One Piece world. We, the viewers and readers, really felt this need to finally stop being afraid of the untouchable elite oppressing everyone, you know, with the threat of being wiped out. It was just absolute peak and really like maybe the best expression of what Luffy as a character is all about. Doing what's right, like punching people if he gets pissed, and not caring about the consequences. And those consequences are that then everything completely just fell apart. Admiral Kizaru arrived, single-handedly laying waste to the next generation, the great generation of rookies alongside the Pacifista. The Straw Hats realized that they weren't even close to ready for the second half of the Grand Line. They were way too weak and overconfident, and then just got absolutely curb-stomped by the unrelenting might of the world government. Thank Nika that Rayleigh was present and strong enough to intervene here, and thank Nika that Kuma was there, able to separate every single member of the crew. I mean, that emotional whiplash is exactly what made Sabaody so damn unforgettable after all. Oda let us celebrate just long enough for us to actually forget just how dangerous and how full of consequences the One Piece world actually is. And so Sabaody has always created this very specific emotion deep inside of me that I just can't escape. Something that I've genuinely not felt in the series until chapter 1186. Like, to be fair, it already kind of started to stir a little bit early on the arc when the Holy Knights and Imu arrived here, but it's been kind of quelled time and time again by the fights that have happened and the like little interruptions. The Holy Knights just got rocked. Imu's been fighting on like a fairly even playing field with Loki, it seems, for a couple of chapters. It's kind of felt good and safe, like not a big win or anything, but also not a terrifying loss and Imu just overpowering everything. But it feels very real right now. Luffy has now punched Imu, the king of the world. And if that is allowed to fly, if the successor of Joy Boy and Nika is allowed to dig into the greatest evil in the series, something is terribly wrong about the show, right? And I just know that that's not going to be the case, which is why I feel very strongly that Oda is now just setting up for essentially the emotional equivalent of Sabaody 2 Electric Boogaloo, right? We, the audience, have finally been giving the punch that we've all been dreaming about, that we were like, oh, maybe this is going to happen at the end of the show. Everyone is going to scream from the rooftops, take like their shirts off, wave them around the air, start flooding social media with insane edits to Brazilian funk music. Now, for the next few chapters, 1187, 88 onwards, Oda is probably about to remind us that Imu is the final villain of the story for a reason. Because, let's be honest here, as much as I love Luffy, as much as I love Gear 5 and seeing Luffy throw down big style and like humiliating some opponents, if he actually walks into this very first fight with the ruler of the world and it's somewhat like equal or easy, I'm gonna be beyond shocked. Like, this is the same series where Crocodile beat him multiple times. Aokiji froze the entire crew and them not being able to do anything. Magellan brought on true despair, and the King of Beasts, Kaido, knocked Luffy out again and again and again, and then killed Luffy, all before Luffy then finally earned that victory, like, somehow. I mean, please, like, Luffy just left Egghead Island unable to truly harm any of the Gorosei, dude. Like, how could he actually ever stand a real chance against Imu? And that's exactly why I think that the punch isn't the climax. I think it's the beginning of, for lack of a better word, Ragnarok. The end of the world starts right now. Now, the key issue here, obviously, is that the series isn't over. There is just a lot more to go. I personally feel like so many more things still need to happen, which then begs the question, how? How do we get out of the absolute mess that's coming here? Well, let's just assume for just a second that I'm actually right. After this cataclysmic Dawn Haymaker that Luffy just landed, the heroes actually lose here. What method of getting the hell out of here is Oda gonna possibly employ? Our good friends, the Mugiwara gang, have gotten really good at escaping, but the circumstances aren't looking exactly great for them either. Because unlike on Sabaody, there isn't this like obvious Kuma character standing on the sidelines waiting to just slap everyone into the next arc. Well, except for Kuma, the big guy has been out of commission, and I don't know if he could just be used to do a big push in the current state do the same thing again, basically. I mean, Kuma.exe is having some troubles, to say the least. But probably the more important question to answer first is, will they even stay together as a crew, or will they go their separate ways again to avoid the wrath of the devil and get stronger individually? I'm not really certain what the right answer is, if I'm gonna be completely honest. Like, my gut's kind of telling me that they're getting separated to cleanly finish that Sabaody parallel, but technically they do not have to get the full time skip treatment again. However, I do think that they should. I mean, come on, seriously, like, just think about it for just a moment. We're in the final saga now. Every major faction has started to make their big money moves, right? The Revolutionary Army, I think, probably just raided Marijua. If not, the Blackbeard Pirates did. The Marines are full steam ahead, trying to eliminate piracy once and for all. Cross Guild, the Holy Knights, the Red Hair Pirates. Pretty much everyone is slowly coming together for what will be the greatest war in the history of manga. There will never be another conflict as grandiose and impactful in scale as the final One Piece war at least should be, after everything that's been set up for over 1,000 chapters. And if that's the direction that the story's heading in, you best bet your ass that Oda needs to split the Straw Hats up once again, because nobody at this point is strong enough to deal with it just yet. We've talked about this, right? Like, the whole crew is just screaming for new power-ups. Like, we've mentioned a bunch of them in past videos, like in this video here, linked below. Zoro's Conqueror's Haki needs some work. Frankie needs bigger mechs. Chopper needs to, like, master his new anti-Domi reversey tech that he's learned from Forest God Fruit. I don't know. Robin needs probably hockey. You kind of get the idea, right? This would be the best way for the series to sort of echo itself once again, the thing that Oda loves doing. So I really do hope that we get another time skip, or at very least like another arc after Elbaph that feels like a spiritual successor to Amazon Lily and Impel Down, right? Or the time skip itself. Maybe it'll just focus on Blackbeard, honestly. Like, he kidnapped Garp. We could see the next Summit War start with him making an example of Garp, bringing a bunch of different key players like the Revolutionaries, the World Government, and Luffy together to fight. All the while, the other Straw Hats are off mastering their own powers with these new goals. Like, maybe we'll see the ultimate sacrifice from some of them. Neomats upgrading Sanji, who's ready to risk it all to get strong enough to defeat some Holy Knights. Robin confronting the trauma of her past, uncovering the deepest secrets of Ohara. Usopp joining the Red Hair Pirates and actually working it out with his father. That would be kind of incredible, but it still leaves another big glaring question. How are they actually gonna get separated? And honestly, like, your guess is almost as good as mine here. Just out of the gates, a couple of standout players come to mind here, namely Loki and Gunko feel like the cleanest answer without introducing like another new third party into Elbaph who just come in suddenly from the outside. Loki, of course, due to the sheer scale of him, has inherently become their greatest escape route. Like, at some point, someone has to realize they can't win here today, and when that happens, bigger than Island Nidhogg Loki might just be the only character physically capable of getting people out of here and, like, take the Sunny along with him on his back. I mean, he could literally just probably grab a tree branch with his teeth and skedaddle out of here. And if Loki and Luffy's fight brings about the end of the Atom Tree itself, or if Imu's Dark Omen flames start corrupting and burning the tree down, I feel like only Loki could actually get the masses out of there. Or maybe Loki puts all on the line himself and puts himself between Imu and everyone else, since he's the only one capable of actually holding the devil back, and him technically kind of having been set up to become the king and ruler of Elbaph. As for Gunko, well, she's the other big player here that has been getting a lot of emphasis during this very climactic clash, which kind of feels still a little bit weird, right? Like, why would Oda choose to dig into the Brook and Gunko past now during the climactic fight with Imu? It's probably gonna have to become relevant in some way, shape, or form very soon, right? Like, I was thinking about talking a little bit more on Grollo here, right? Her dad, but I really got nothing, except, well, I do kind of owe Kendall an apology, guess. Like, sorry, Kendall, for all my slander. Maybe you aren't that bad of a person after all, and you're just a stunning, nice lady. Really sorry, please accept my apology. What's important is that Brook's flashback ends without him remembering the truth, realizing that Shuri is not guilty of what he actually thought, and we already saw that Shuri is willing to help Brook and try to resist Imu, so what really is the payoff here of that flashback that I absolutely love, by the way, just to get it out of the way? Jesus. Easily, for me, one of the top 5 flashbacks that we've gotten in a long time. Like, surely it's not just that we know where Brook's rat scar comes from randomly. No. I do think it must be because of Gunko's unique and specific connection to Imu. Brook realizing that Gunko is not bad could absolutely lead to a very specific anime trope that lets the Straw Hats escape, because the big bad villain loses control for just a heartbeat because their general betrays them. Gunko, the possessed, reverses the connection and stops Imu just long enough to send them back to the Holy Land. Meanwhile, the crews then split, fleeing the island while it's burning down, and Gunko might just create an opening here just for long enough for Loki to escape with the Straw Hats. So to me, they're just the two safest bets here. Gunko and Loki, but come on. It's me. You think I don't have some really cool wildcard options to discuss too? Well, I don't. No, I do, of course. There is one actually that I think almost everyone is just crazy sleeping on. Because the more chaotic Elbaph becomes, the more likely for me it just seems that Blackbeard is just gonna show up at the end of this arc. For starters, it's the arc where we learned all about him and his daddy issues, but also Teach showing up now would be like his exact MO Marineford, right? Like, Teach waits until Whitebeard is just exhausted and the war is at its grandest, and then he swoops in and gets what he wants and intervenes. Whole cake? He sends Kuzan to recruit Pudding while Big Mom's empire is slowly falling apart. Amazon Lily, he arrives while the Marines and the Kuja are already fighting in trying to steal Boa's devil fruit from them. Teach just weasels to go against all the greatest enemies to kind of like backdoor them, and I could totally see a world where he just returns to claim Loki's devil fruit to fulfill his father's legacy, or maybe even crazier, just straight goes for Imu here. Like, let's not kid ourselves. Everyone is distracted right now, and this is just like the sweet spot exact scenario that Teach always thrives in. Now, am I saying that Blackbeard is gonna come to save Luffy? Absolutely not. Big Bad Teach doesn't really save anybody, but he will work alongside them to get what he wants. We already know this from the Rocky Port incident, where he worked with Law and Kobe to just claim Hachinosu for himself. So if Imu or Elbaph has something that he wants, and I'm pretty sure that it has a lot that he wants, he may actually come bail the Straw Hats and Loki out so that he can get it, whatever the thing is that he wants here. I've always kind of loved the idea that the final saga isn't going to be a series of clean 1-versus-1 fights. I like it to be a lot more absolute chaos, every major faction pursuing their own goals, constantly getting in each other's way, forming alliances, betraying each other. That's kind of always been one of One Piece's biggest strength as a manga anyways, right? The world doesn't stop moving just because Luffy starts a fight or we're on some island. Stuff keeps happening in the background. So if Blackbeard appears here, I don't think it would be to begin his final battle with Luffy for the One Piece. I think it would be to remind us that while the Straw Hats are trying to save the world, Teach is still just trying to steal the throne from Imu, most likely. And since I just want to talk about wild, wacky, crackpot ideas in every single video, you know, I just had to find a way to weave some mythology references here in to create another situation that would let the crew scatter around the world. Today I have a very fine, well-aged mythological tie-in rooted into the deepest, biggest part of Elbaph that I think you will like with a great aftertaste: the Atom Tree itself. Yeah, I get it. Weird idea at first, but just listen to the voice of all things. What if the Atom Tree, with its deep roots and spiritual connections, has some big secret power that we still don't know about? Something that gets explored if, say, I don't know, like the big sword is removed, or if Omen is activated, or like maybe it just needs to burn down for this to happen, and the only way to find that out would be through the voice of all things, which Luffy has access to, and this could definitely work, especially since throughout Elbaph, it's kind of clear that Oda has been very intentionally drawing from like the basic Norse mythology. Nidhogg, the multiple levels / worlds of Elbaph, the names and creatures created through the MMAs, it's all direct Norse mythology, so why would these things not extend to the Atom Tree itself? Literally based on the world tree Yggdrasil, right? The tree that's the axis of the cosmos itself, the thing that connects different realms together, gods, giants, mortals, everything is linked through its branches and roots. Navigating is the same as traveling the planes of the multiverse, so maybe it has access to other parts of the One Piece world. Now, I'm not saying that the Atom Tree literally has to function the exact same way here. We know it doesn't, but this could still manifest in a very unique way that would kind of be this Deus Ex Machina thing to get the crew out of Dodge without control over what's actually happening. Like, imagine Luffy completely cornered, instinctively reaching out for help the same way he did during Sabaody, and then the damn tree opens a bunch of portals as it burns down, right? You know, like its last gift is salvation for the future, and then like while it's burning down, a seedling drops, and boom, future Atom Tree, happy emotions, blah blah. Like, pretty cool, I think. Also, no need to worry about it being used again later, since the tree would just burn down, but also it could like separate the crew in a way that feels more forced, but not like unheard of. And the voice of all things feels like super relevant here specifically because of Luffy and Imu's clash, so maybe this is the first step of what I brought up earlier, like Luffy's next evolution that Imu is actually going to cause. He's now used it with the Sea Kings, we've seen it work with Zunisha, we've seen it connect Luffy to ancient beings that normal people can't even communicate with, like Emeth here, so why couldn't that extend to the Atom Tree itself, especially after we just learned that Imu has a very similar power? I don't know, like to me this just kind of feels like a perfect time for a goat clutch save here, but what if that save doesn't extend to Luffy himself? Like, I mentioned something earlier about this kind of mirroring the Summit War saga and using Garp as a prisoner, but I do actually think that there's another possibility that I just genuinely can't get out of my head, something that would work perfectly as the climax to Luffy versus Imu, an option that I know has been floating around but I've never really wanted to explore, but now I think we kind of have to, because what if I've been assuming the entire Sabaody parallel incorrectly? What if the Straw Hats don't actually lose each other? What if this time they lose Luffy? Like, imagine Luffy is the ace of the final war. We've talked about this idea a little bit before, but I always kind of assumed that would happen if, like, Imu used Domi Reversi on Luffy, but now that we know that Imu just can't seem to Domi Reversi Luffy or Loki, what if Imu just grabs Luffy and runs away here? Like, what an absolute insane cliffhanger to the arc that would be, right? And it would be a complete switch up of Sabaody 2. Poor Luffy had to watch helplessly as every single one of his crewmates disappeared in front of him, but what if everyone now needs to watch him get stolen by the devil, the Straw Hats watching helplessly, being too weak to save their captain once again? Honestly, I just love that idea. The crew kind of has to realize that they're way too weak at this point, like they're so far away from Luffy, and they couldn't win and help him and Loki succeed, so they now need to get stronger in order to save him. Then maybe they could split up, do the exact same thing we talked about earlier, but this time it's in order to rally the world to Luffy's side. Robin goes and, gets Dragon. Zoro pleads for Cross Guild. Usopp recruits the Red Hair crew. Frankie gets Water, Seven, and the Gallela. Loki makes his way over to Punk Hazard and grabs the Gallela Giants. Jinbei goes to get Shirahoshi. Nami smacks Momonosuke and Wano, I guess. Sanji, Katakuri. Dude, like, you kind of get the idea. It works really well, I think, and it would be absolutely awesome. It would be, like, so freaking cool to see them train and come together to save Luffy, and Luffy seeing his crew suddenly rock up to save him in his darkest moment, looking like absolute freaks for truly the first time in the series, because Luffy always goes saves them. Finally, now they could go and repay that in spades in the coolest way possible. And it also just makes sense. Like, Luffy really is the greatest threat to the world government at this point, not just because he's a Yonko, but because he's awakened the Nika fruit, carries the will of D, and somehow keeps inspiring entire nations to rebel against tyranny. Plus, his dad is also like their next biggest enemy. If you're Imu, why would you just go kill him immediately here? No. Hell no. You'd make an example of this man. Not even the reborn Joy Boy, the warrior of liberation, is gonna be able to defeat the world government. Hell, I don't know if anyone is able to do that right now except maybe Red Hair Shanks. Like, he's been up to some weird stuff, right? I kind of think I might have figured out exactly what he's been doing, why he's been appearing in certain locations, and what his end goal is, because he's planning to flip the world on its head, as Roger said. Literally, by shifting the entire planet on its axis, and if you want to know how, why, when, and who's helping him, and why he told us the answer to everything in the very first chapter of the story, you should check this really fun video right here. Otherwise, thanks so much for watching, thanks so much to our fantastic Patreons. Yeah, Again, leave your comments for that video in case I'm wrong, and I will see you in the next video. On Tuesday, we're going to talk about more Void Century stuff. Really fun theory for you there, and I hope you have a great week. Until then, bye.